Will John Mateer return to the field for Oklahoma, taking on Texas in Red River? Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what is happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege, get $20 off your first purchase. All right, we got plenty to get into, so let's dive into it. Let's go around the conference. So we got to start off over at Oklahoma as we are waiting for the latest on John Mateer. Will he return to the field for Oklahoma? Initially, when he first injured his hand a couple weeks ago, had surgery, kind of thought, all right, well, this is going to be a several-week thing. I basically ruled him out for this game. And then kind of rumbling started last week. You know, he could be back for the big rivalry game against Texas. So will John Mateer be healthy enough to go this week? That is the big question. Brent Venables appearing on his coach's show on Monday evening saying, quote, "I don't know when John Mateer will be back." So Brent Venables playing coy early in the week here. Of course, after the win over Kent State on Saturday, Brent Venables cast some doubt about Mateer playing. And even saw George Stoyev on 3 reported. Brent Venables says he's assuming John Mateer won't be available next week. Says if he's not, they feel confident quarterback Michael Hawkins leading the offense. So, of course, we could be in for Michael Hawkins getting a second consecutive start here. But as our buddy Eddie Radosevich posted a video to social media, he was from outside in the bushes. He reported Oklahoma practiced indoors on Monday and emphasized it was 85 degrees and sunny outside in Norman. So, you know, the thought you go to is, okay, Oklahoma's trying to hide some things and keep this thing coy. How about on the flip side? Steve Sarkisian, he was asked, speaking with the media on Monday, about preparation, and he said, quote, "We will plan for John Mateer. We have to. He is a dynamic player. He's the heartbeat of that offense. Everything goes through him." He went on to say, "We did play against Hawkins last year. He's a much improved player. Like most young players, they get better over time. You could see improvement for sure. And Coach Arbuckle has a great scheme that we got to prepare for. He's a fantastic coach. They tax you a lot of different ways with varying tempos, formations, trick plays, quarterback runs, shot plays. So we got to prepare for the offense as much as we need to prepare for the quarterback, whichever one it's going to be. It's more about the offense in our world." Yeah, I mean, again, it just stands out him saying, we'll plan for Mateer. We have to. So, you know, Steve Sarkisian saying they're planning for John Mateer. Oklahoma kind of playing coy and going, yeah, you know, I don't know. We'll see. He may not go. But, you know, look, even if they do know it's going to be Michael Hawkins, if you're Oklahoma, you know, it doesn't hurt anything to play coy here and just go, yeah, we don't really know what's going on with John Mateer. Now, I've heard some people theorize maybe both guys play. You know, Mateer can certainly still use his legs and his running ability. You know, even if the hand is not fully there, maybe he can do some handoffs. I don't know. I mean, you don't want him out there just one-dimensional. But I do think it was good that you had the Kent State game this past week with Michael Hawkins to get some more confidence going. And, you know, much like, you know, things change with different coordinators. The Michael Hawkins we saw last year, maybe he's a different Michael Hawkins this year with Ben Arbuckle calling the plays for him. So anyway, we'll keep an eye on it. We'll talk more with our guys from Locked On Sooners here in a little bit on what they're thinking. But again, it's certainly something we're going to have to track all week. And if John Mateer plays, Texas is still the favorite, according to FanDuel and a lot of the sports books out there. But if John Mateer does play, I wonder, or does start, I wonder if that line moves at all in favor of Oklahoma. You got to think that it may. All right, other news happening around the conference. We'll jump back to Texas real quick. Steve Sarkisian, talking on Monday, reminded people that the two places the Longhorns played their Power 4 games thus far, in Columbus, Ohio at Ohio State, and Gainesville, Florida against Florida, some of the toughest environments in college football. He said, quote, "I mean, how many teams are there in college football? 136? I take the other 135 and have them go play at Ohio State and at the Swamp. See how they do. So, Sark, letting it be known, yeah, we have played some tough environments. Yeah, we've lost both those games, but you go play in them and see how you do. All right, other news going on around the conference. How about over at Ole Miss? We are expecting possibly to see Trinidad Chambliss go again for the Rebels against Washington State. Well, Lane Kiffin speaking with the media on Monday, giving an update on Austin Simmons, his starting quarterback at the start of the season. He said, quote, he's continuing to get closer to 100%. He's not there yet. This week was good for him. We'll see tomorrow. Of course, Chambliss is, kind of one of the early favorites climbing up the Heisman list early on with what he's done. But Simmons, obviously, was named the starter in the offseason and earned the starting job. So when he's fully back healthy, does he leapfrog Trinidad Chambliss? I don't know. It's going to be a big question for Lane Kiffin, this Ole Miss team that is pretty stacked and has a favorable schedule down the stretch the rest of the way. Other news over at Georgia, Kirby Smart giving a positive update on left tackle Monroe Freeling ahead of the Auburn game. He said, quote, he has an ankle injury, but it isn't as severe as we thought. Not going to require surgery or anything. Said he would not practice on Monday, but they're hopeful to get him back. Big game coming up Saturday night against Auburn on the Plains. Now, also Kirby asked about Auburn quarterback Jackson Arnold, who has run all over opposing defenses this year with his mobility. Kirby saying, quote, first thing stands out is his athleticism. He has 2 or 3 plays that were broken plays or plays maybe scramble plays, RPOs that were designed to be thrown. Maybe the look changed and he takes off running for 60, 70 yards. He doesn't just run for 8 or 9 yards to go down. He runs like a running back. He runs over you, through you, and around you. So Georgia's defense, which has not been lights out, to say the least, this year, could have some problems with Jackson Arnold, particularly playing on the road. Other news going around the conference, how about Tennessee? Josh Heupel giving an update on his star cornerback, Jermod McCoy, who, of course, suffered a torn ACL back in January while training, has not been able to get back onto the field since that serious knee injury. Josh Heupel, speaking with the media on Monday, said McCoy's doing a great job in his rehab. So Jermod continues to do a great job with our medical staff, strength staff, and added any reports that McCoy is targeting a particular game to return were unfair. There was some speculation that he could be back this weekend against Arkansas, but Tennessee's done well, even without McCoy in the fold. The secondary is held up, but certainly a big-time player you'd love to get back sooner rather than later. Over at LSU, Brian Kelly giving some injury updates ahead of their game against South Carolina. He said quarterback Garrett Nussmeier, who obviously has been dealing with some kind of injury, is set to play, as well as starting running back Caden Durham, who missed the game at Ole Miss, and offensive lineman Weston Davis, who got hurt in warmups against Ole Miss and had to miss the game. So those 3 players good to go for LSU. Aaron Anderson, their star wide receiver, he said is probable at this stage in the week. So we'll keep an eye on that injury report later in the week. Over at Alabama, they are getting ready to take on their third straight ranked team, taking on Mizzou after beating Georgia and beating Vanderbilt. DeBoer saying Monday, you look at one game, you focus on only one game. That's what we did against Georgia. That's what we did against Vanderbilt. Now we're doing that against Mizzou. Well, you just focus on those things that you control. You work through it one by one. Of course, Missouri is 5-0, averaging over 500 yards per game on offense. That's number 2 in the nation, and defensively giving up less than 200 yards on defense. That's one of the tops in the nation. So Mizzou playing very well. It's going to be a big test for Alabama. 11 a.m. Central on ABC Saturday morning. One more note here at running back Jam Miller, who had a breakout performance, 136 yards in the win over Vanderbilt. That broke a big drought. It was the first time Alabama had a running back go over the 100-yard mark in SEC play since Jace McClellan back in 2023. Josh Pate tweeting out that stat over the weekend. Meanwhile, over at Vanderbilt, Diego Pavia licking his wounds after the loss to Alabama. And he said on Monday they still have national championship expectations despite the loss to Alabama. He said, we got every single goal we want out in front of us. That's a national championship. Alabama has a loss. We have a loss. A lot of people in the SEC have a loss. We just got to win out. We got every single goal we want in front of us, and that is a national championship. So Diego Pavia still with high expectations there in Nashville. Over at Texas A&M, Mike Elko getting ready for the Florida Gators coming into College Station, and he's raving about him. He said Florida is by far and away the most talented team we've played this year. Of course, when you just looking on paper, DJ Lagway, former 5-star recruit, I mean, they got talent all over there. Dallas Wilson, the big 5-star receiver. So this will be a big, big test for A&M with a Florida team that's feeling themselves, maybe getting a little bit of a groove after that big win over Texas last week. One more note on this one. It'll be fun to watch. A&M linebacker Torian York going up against quarterback DJ Lagway. It's a beef that goes back to high school. Temple versus Willis High. Torian York, a 3-star. DJ Lagway, a 5-star. Torian York won the last 2 meetings versus Lagway. So this will be the 3rd time that they meet on the football field at any level. Meanwhile, over at Auburn, an interesting story to come out on Monday. Have you heard Hugh Freeze talking with the media? Apparently, they were dealing with struggles in their offensive line on the bye week, and Xavier Miller is set to get a few more snaps on the offensive line. And Hugh Freeze revealing that they tested left tackle Xavier Chaplin's hearing in the off week. He said, quote, "We've done some testing on his hearing, and there's an issue there. That goes back to us. Should have handled the cadence stuff differently for him. Nobody hurts more than him. He was really distraught. Through 5 games, Auburn's front line has struggled, surrendering an FBS leading 21 sacks and accounting for 17 penalties. A lot of false starts. So pretty crazy when one of your starting tackles you're looking at and going, yeah, he can't hear. That's why he's jumping early. He's got some hearing issues. So Auburn hoping to take care of that before hosting Georgia on Saturday night. Over at Florida, Billy Napier, of course, coming off the big win over Texas. Paul Feinbaum on with McElroy and Kublik on Monday asked about Billy Napier's future. And Feinbaum saying unless he turns everything around like he did last year, then he probably saves his job again. But I ultimately think he's going to be gone. That's the tough part here with Billy Napier is he's going to have to, Saturday was a minor miracle, beating Texas, great. But can you do it again? That's the big question. And he's got to do it again and again and again. That's a tough schedule. Meanwhile, over at Kentucky, there was an interesting story to come out on Sunday. Multiple reports surfaced that perhaps offensive coordinator Bush Hamdan was set to be fired in the coming days. Well, Matt Jones of Kentucky Sports Radio tweeting out, not sure where everybody's getting the Bush Hamdan being fired news, but I'm told that is not the case. Kentucky's offense has been struggling this year outside of the 48 points against Eastern Michigan and 3 SEC losses. Wildcats averaging just 16 points a game. They're on a bye this week before they get Texas coming to town next week. And hey, a few scheduling notes here. South Carolina and Miami have usually agreed to cancel their home-and-home football series for 2026 and 2027. Hurricanes were supposed to come to Williams-Brice next year, and the Gamecocks head to Hard Rock in 2027. Both programs deciding to do away with that because SEC and ACC moved to the 9-game conference schedule. Of course, South Carolina is still going to keep their permanent rivalry with Clemson. They don't want to play another brutal, non-conference game, so they are going to remove that. And then Auburn, no longer going to host Baylor next year. According to On3's Brent McMurphy, they're going to move this game to Atlanta as part of the Affleck kickoff game. So expected to create reportedly up to $5 million in NIL opportunities for Auburn players. So obviously you can sell more tickets. You're going to get a big payday from the Chick-fil-A, Affleck folks, whoever sponsored the bowl. And so this would be Auburn's first game in Atlanta since the 2017 SEC championship game that they lost to Georgia. And then shout out to some SEC players of the week. DJ Lagway from Florida named the offensive player of the week. Defensive players, Justin Jefferson from Alabama and Damian Sanford from A&M. And offensive lineman of the week, Parker Brailsford. Defensive lineman, Cassius Howell. And freshman of the week, Dallas Wilson from Florida. All right, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, we'll talk with our Locked On Sooners guys, get the latest on the John Mateer news that is coming your way here in just a second. Hey, this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Every day we make decisions, but over at Prize Picks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with Prize Picks, where it is good to be right. Playing Prize Picks is such a fun, simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less on player projections, like Josh Allen's passing yards or Saquon Barkley's rushing for a touchdown, and you're in the game. You're going to love how quick it is. You can make your lineup in just under a minute. And your favorite part, probably going to be Prize Picks. adding great features like stacks. So if you want to ride with a player, you can select their pass yards, rush yards, and touchdowns all in one lineup. It's also fun to follow other players in the app and copy their lineups with just one click. And of course, the new injury reboot feature. If your player leaves early and doesn't return, it won't count against you. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege. Get $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right.
It's the greatest rivalry in college football. So, of course, we've got Locked On SEC's Chris Gordy joining us to talk Red River Showdown. Chris, as you start to look at this game, what do you make of OU Texas this year?
Yeah, it's funny you bring me in. You're like, of course we got to bring in Locked On SEC because this is such a traditional SEC rivalry game. You know, it's like
as long-standing members of the SEC, we know that you have a good understanding of how this rivalry goes.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm still getting used to all that. I'm still adapting to it. Look, you bring in a big, passionate rivalry like this into the SEC, it fits because there's hatred on both sides. Both fan bases hate each other. You know, it's funny, even being the diehard SEC guy through and through I am, for years I would watch, this was a must-watch game for me. I mean, even, all the years of the Big 12. And, I don't know about you guys, just thinking, I was thinking back to different memories of this game throughout the years. And, of course, like when I just think Red River, the first thing I think of is Mac Brown and Bob Stoops. Like those, I'd see both those guys on the sidelines and, all the different names from Vince Young and Adrian Peterson and, I was even going through some recent photos of the past few years where it's like Spencer Radler and Casey Thompson and Dylan Gabriel and Sam Ellinger and like all these just like, oh my God, I forgot about that guy and that guy and that guy. So it's look, it's a passionate rivalry. It's one that, at times feels like you can throw the records out, even a year where maybe Oklahoma wasn't their best, still finds a way to win this game. So yeah, I mean, it's a fun rivalry game, and man, it certainly it has flipped the narrative of what we thought this game was going to be preseason. The talk of, Texas is going to be preseason one. We'll see what Oklahoma is with John Mateer. Will they be ranked? Maybe if they keep winning, they'll be in the top 10. And this will be a battle of top 10 teams. And now we get here, and Oklahoma lived up to their side of the story, being a top 10 team, but Texas is the one that falls out of the top 25. I think that was a little overreactionary by the AP. I get it. It's not a good loss to lose on the road to a bad Billy Napier Florida team. But, again, I think as this season goes along, Texas will be back in the top 25, I feel like.
I didn't think they had it in them to not put Texas or not keep Texas in the top 25.
Well, the coaches poll kept them, so there was that. But the AP, I mean, I get it. They dropped Penn State, losing on the road to a terrible UCLA team, and Texas losing on the road to to Florida. So it was a little bit overreactionary, but it speaks to where this Texas team is right now. I mean, they, Arch Manning. I said before the year I thought he was going to have a roller coaster season of ups and downs. And it's been more downs than ups so far. And I think it's not just on him. I think a big part of it is the offensive line and, inconsistency with the receivers. And there's a whole lot of stuff and blame to go around. But is this the game you're going to fix it all? Like you're getting Brent Venables in this defense, which is number one or number two in just about every big statistical category. This seems like a tough opponent to do it against.
Well, let me ask you this, Gordy. How surprised are you at Oklahoma's defense turning out the way it is so far?
Yeah, I mean, I knew they were going to be good. I said that before the season. I said, Brent Venables is always going to be, his bread's always going to be buttered on the defensive side, and they're going to have a good defense. But I did think losing some of those key leaders you had from last year's team, and Stutzman and Bowman, I said, all right, well, new guys are going to have to emerge, and we're starting to see that. So it's so hard to put too much stock into what they did last week because it was Kent State, and I think half the country didn't even watch it. We were all watching the other big SEC games, but yeah, I mean, I think you get to this point in the season and you're number one or number two in most statistical categories. This is a legit defense, and so I'm curious to see, are they going to bring pressure? Are they going to because Florida kind of picked and choose. Like they were getting pressure on Texas' whole line, sometimes just bringing 3 or 4. So, I wonder, is this one where you even need to blitz a ton? Can Oklahoma get that penetration just with bringing your 3 or 4 down linemen with just the simple way that Oklahoma's offensive line is underachieving, or Texas' offensive line is underachieving right now. So be curious to see how they do it. But if I had to bet, I think Venables is going to bring some blitzes and try to force him into making some stupid mistakes.
Yeah, I think early on in this one, it's going to be Brent Venables testing that offensive line just to see how up to the task are they to handle some of the exotic looks that he wants to bring, to handle just the guys that they've got that they can bring. And I was watching back some of the Auburn film and just seeing how willing Brent Venables is to leave his guys out on an island. I mean, he was leaving, true freshman Cortland Guillory out there against Cam Coleman, who's one of the best 5 wide receivers in college football. He was very willing to do that so that he could make sure that they were putting a ton of pressure on Jackson Arnold and making sure that they had adequate spies to Jackson Arnold's athleticism. I think it'll be a similar kind of a game plan, but as you mentioned, man, it's not as good of an offensive line as maybe what Oklahoma faced when they did play Auburn.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of Texas fans I'm seeing are poo-pooing on their guys now, saying, hey, we should have spent more money on, better alignment in the portal or in recruiting. And, some of these highly touted guys we have aren't living up to it. And I think this is it's the reality of newness. Texas lost a ton from last year's team. It's funny. I was just looking through photos from last year's game and how many Texas dudes I'm seeing, not on the team, not on the team, not on the team. Like they're all in the NFL now. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just sometimes you got to go through, not a rebuild, but a reload that takes a little time to develop consistency and chemistry and all that. And that was my take before the season on Arch Manning. I said, I think Arch is going to be an awesome quarterback, ... in 2026. I thought he was going to go through the ups and downs this year. Next year, he'll be awesome. Next year, Texas will, they'll bring back a ton and they'll be an awesome team. But I just think right now they're going through some of those growing pains, and it sucks because they had national title hopes and preseason #1, and it's not fully dead yet. But certainly you take a loss here in this one, I mean, it's all but dead because that's a 3rd loss. And, barring running the table and getting some help, you're not going to the playoffs. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be very interesting to see. Like I said, if I'm Brent Venables, what film I'm looking at is week 1 and what Matt Patricia did with Ohio State. I mean, they ran some exotic stuff, dropping, like having guys up at the line, dropping them last second, DBs, showing man and then playing zone. I mean, it was just he put some, and that's an NFL mind, but he really confused Arch, and look what happened. I mean, he was throwing the ball at guys' feet. He was seeing ghosts out there. And so I think that's what Venables is going to want to do in this one.
So do you think that Texas is now back? Are we back to the Texas that we're used to and we've seen for years?
Look, I'll stick up for him a little bit because I saw, one of the Aggie guys putting up a graphic trying to compare Sark through his first stretch to Jimbo Fisher. And I'm like, look, Sark at least he's been to back-to-back playoff semifinals. So at least you got to give him that. That's way more than Jimbo Fisher ever achieved. Now, if Jimbo were coaching in a 12-team playoff, maybe he would have gotten the Aggies there. But I think Sark is a good coach. I think like I said, they're just going through the war of attrition right now with a lot of new pieces. And some guys hit the ground running as a first-time starter and are awesome. Other guys just take time to mature and develop. And that's what Texas is going through.
Well, and I think they're a little more battle tested than Oklahoma coming into this one, having gone on the road to play against Ohio State, gone on the road to play against Florida. Yeah, they didn't come away with W's in those games, but they've played tough competition. Oklahoma played Michigan. They played Auburn. Are they as good as those 2 teams that Oklahoma played? I don't think so. At least Ohio State is better than Michigan. Florida and Auburn might be on the same level. Maybe Florida's a little bit better. I think there's a real argument for that. But, your Oklahoma team, even though it's not really a complete team, the side of the ball that's been dominant has been incredibly dominant through 5 games. And that's the Oklahoma defense. So we'll talk more about Oklahoma's offense coming up with Chris Gordy of Locked On SEC here on Locked On Sooners and Locked On SEC.
Hey, more Locked On SEC in just a second, but college football is back, and we're super excited from the tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands. There's nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel more like a battle sometimes than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why you got to use our friends at Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It is the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. You pull up the Game Time app, just a couple of taps. You will see amazing deals. I'm talking your favorite college football games as low as $25. If you're heading to an SEC game this weekend, chances are it is there on the Game Time app. Go get your tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONCollege, get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that is promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. This episode also brought to you by our friends at Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There are certain businesses that make the neighborhood the neighborhood. These are the places that become an extension of your home, whether it's the sports bar dedicated to your team's fan base, the spot with the best wings in town for game day, or that beloved local chain that has been rooted in your community for years. These businesses are what bring people together. When neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. And so the places across SEC country like Waldo's Chicken and Beer near Vanderbilt, Salon Haven in Knoxville, Spotted Salamander in South Carolina. There are local spots in your neighborhood that have been the heart of your community for years. It's the kind of place where you walk in and everybody knows your name. Take this ad as an excuse to go support your favorite local spot and have yourself a day in the neighborhood. Square is a proud sponsor of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/LockedOnCollege to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square will see you in the neighborhood.
We're here with Chris Gordy of Locked On SEC talking OU Texas ahead of the Red River Showdown. And Chris, we've talked a lot about the defense. We know that Brent Venables and his unit are going to bring it on Saturday. I think the question mark for Oklahoma right now is what this offense is going to look like, even if John Mateer plays or if he doesn't play. How confident are you? Let's just say if John Mateer were to play, how do you feel about the Oklahoma Sooners in that light?
Yeah, I mean, this to me is the big question we're going to be watching all week. And, I was talking with Jay about it that, some of the reports were that the Sooners practice indoors on Monday where it was sunny and 85 in Norman. I mean, it's like, okay, they're trying to keep something under wraps here. And frankly, why not? I wouldn't be shocked if the first injury report comes out on Wednesday. You know what I would do? I would list John Mateer as questionable, because questionable puts it right at he's not probable. He's not, it's a perfect, we don't know.
50-50, yeah.
And I would keep him at that the whole week and until we get to the weekend and see. I mean, play coy. I was talking to somebody about this earlier today. He said, look, if Mateer's hand isn't fully there yet, what if they use both guys? What if you use Hawkins, ironically, use him as the passing quarterback and bring in Mateer as almost, as the runner, like bring him in, have him hand the ball off to the running backs a couple times and then, show pass and then have him roll out and just tuck it and run it. Because obviously his running ability is one of his big assets as well. He's proven that this year. So I don't know how they're going to play it. I'm happy they were able to get Michael Hawkins a game, in this system. I get it was Kent State, but this system to get some comfortability. And, that's a big thing too. Somebody was asking me about Hawkins and, he didn't look all that great last year. I said, yeah, but this is a new system. This is the Ben Arbuckle offense. And, he looks a little bit better in this. So, I think you'll get a much more different, a much more confident Hawkins if he is the guy. But, yeah, man, this is, like I said, I think this is going to come to the wire, down to the wire. If I had to guess, I would think we see both guys in some capacity on Saturday.
That's an interesting take of bringing them both in and having Mateer as your runner, like kind of like the Belldozer type.
Belldozer.
Old school Belldozer, where you had Blake Bell, who was a quarterback but moved to tight end, and you bring him in just to run people over. Heck, they did that with Jackson Arnold his freshman year as well. So
doesn't that sound like a Pete Thamel report we'll get on Saturday morning? Like, I am being told that Michael Hawkins will start, but John Mateer will be available. Everybody's going, oh, what does that mean?
Ooh. I think that's probably why the spread is sitting where it's at right now. It's like at 2.5 over on FanDuel, as people are hammering it because why they have no clue which quarterback's gonna play. So I guess the question is, Gordy, do you think Oklahoma could win with or even without Mateer? Do you think they can win with Hawkins? Do you think they can win with Mateer? What is your assessment on the offensive side of the ball of being able to potentially cause problems for Texas?
Well, I don't want to overreact to what we just saw against Florida. Look, Texas's defense did not play well in that game. Jaden Ball, he had some really good runs, on the interior of that defensive line. And then there was those few plays. Look, Dallas Wilson is a freak. I don't think it was talked enough about. He was a 5-star receiver that set spring game records for Florida and then was hurt and missed the first, 4 or 5 weeks of the season. He made his season debut against Texas and was like dragging Michael Taff and like knocking other great DBs to the ground. But just because Dallas Wilson did that to them, I'm not going to go, oh, well, Texas's defense sucks. Texas's defense, I think, is still very good. So,
very good.
To me, the key to me is going to be Oklahoma's got to get this ground game going. And whether that's Blaylock, whoever, establish the run in this one. If they can get whoever the running back is back there, let's just say it's Blaylock, and he's getting 4 or 5 yards a touch, you'll feel much better about it because it'll put Hawkins, if it is him starting, it's just more manageable downs, 3rd and short, 2nd and short, 3rd and short, where you have some flexibility on the offense. I love what Isaiah Satania has brought. I think he's been a great weapon. Watched him at Arkansas, and then of course, Kanik, who's kind of taken everybody by surprise as well at the tight end spot. So, they've got some nice pieces, but again, it's a rivalry game. So, you almost feel like if it is Hawkins, everybody comes out a little bit nervous and, we go 3-0, somebody has a drop, you go 3 and out, and then you're punting and, first quarter ends and it's nothing. Like I see like that could certainly be how this one could play out. But again, run game. If Oklahoma is handing that ball off and it's 7 yards, 2nd and 3, we're going to know very early. Okay, if they can move the ball on the ground against Texas, then it's going to take so much more pressure off of Hawkins if he is the guy.
And that's been the struggle, right, Jay? Is that the Oklahoma ground game just really has had a hard time getting going.
Yeah, it has been. But the funny thing is that was also Florida's problem going into this game. They hadn't figured out the run game whatsoever. Like when I went and looked at the numbers, like Florida is ranked 13th in the SEC in rushing before this game, and number 12 is who? Oklahoma. So it was
they had some success and they committed to it. That was the thing. And Florida fans were getting a little nervous because going late into that game, it was like Boss still, it was like feed him. He's having an awesome day. Feed him, and they did that, and it led to the win. But let me ask you guys, what's the issue with Jaden Ott? Because he was one of the top, transfer portal guys and the talk of, the offseason, and 20 carries for 66 yards on the season.
Yeah, he looked a lot better against Kent State. It's just Kent State. They're a terrible run defense. At least they had been through, the first 4 games of the season for them. But he looked the cleanest he's looked like as a runner. He was smooth. He was elusive. He was patient. He looked a little bit more confident in what he was trying to do out there. The first few times that we'd seen him this season, he did not look any of those things. It was like he got the ball, and as soon as he saw somebody, he just kind of tucked and fell down. Like he got a few runs where he was able to pick up positive yardage, but it was pretty much a mixed bag in the first few games of the season. He looked more comfortable this week. What that means moving forward, we'll see. I don't know if they'll trust him on like passing downs or in passing situations. I think that'll still be a Javante Barnes role. And it's Torrey Blaylock. I mean, he's your starter, and he's continued to prove that he's the most reliable back on this team, even as a true freshman. So I think we will see some Jaden Ott. I just don't know exactly how much. Jay, what do you think, man?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as that. So my take has been, Gordy, that when Jaden Ott got here, he said that he had that ankle injury and he played on it, and he probably shouldn't have. He should have probably sat, but he continued to play the entire season, which really hindered him. Well, then he gets hurt in camp with his shoulder in a conference where you're going to be running against some pretty big dudes. You're going to be running against some good power. that he probably felt like, okay, if I keep playing on this and trying to run these dudes over, I'm probably going to hurt myself for real. And I'm a senior. That's really going to drop me down as far as stock. I probably need to make sure I'm better. So it kind of felt like he had like kind of the yips, that he was afraid that if he ran into somebody a little too hard, it was going to hurt his shoulder. Well, I guess he practiced well in the bye week and they started to see some progressions. And in this last game, I mean, his first 2 carries, he got 10 yards and 12 yards. And then he had, I think it was 2 4-yard runs and a 7-yard run. So you're like, okay, you're starting to look like the confidence is back in the shoulder and he's okay. So I'm assuming he's going to play a lot in this Texas game, him and Torrey Blaylock, because both of them were dealing with shoulder stuff, but you're hoping that you get both of them out there. I don't know if he's going to actually produce what we were hoping for coming in. We were thinking he was going to end up being possibly one of the top backs in the SEC. I think these guys just force feed him the ball. So like you said, the way Florida did it was just they gave the ball, they just kept giving him the ball. And they gave him 27 carries in that game. So if we do it, maybe we'll see success. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think the bigger issue beyond just the running back play is the offensive line play. The offensive line play hasn't been very good. It's been kind of average at times.
I was going to ask, what grade would you give them through the first part of the season?
As a run blocking unit, I'd say it's probably a C- or a D+. As a pass protecting unit, they had been pretty good until Kent State. And then Kent State, for some reason, they struggled. I don't know if they just didn't come in with the same intensity that they needed to come into this game with, that they just wanted to sleepwalk through it or what. But man, it was not good. If you go back and watch that Kent State game, you're like, what is this Oklahoma offensive line doing? They're letting Kent State have Michael Hawkins under siege. It did not look good. So hopefully they'll have a bounce back performance this week against Texas, because that's huge, man. As good as Oklahoma's defense is, Texas's defense is also really good, and they are capable of creating a lot of problems for Oklahoma's offense if the offensive line doesn't step their game up.
Yeah, I agree with you there. That's exactly what the thing is for Oklahoma. Is we've got to get a push on the offensive line. And I think we can. I think that at some point, with like you said, like we kind of mentioned before, the pass has been good as far as protection. They've been protecting like crazy, except for in this last game. But again, they looked like they were disinterested in actually playing football this week. Everybody was focused. They were looking ahead. They were looking ahead to Texas, period. That's exactly what it was. You can tell. They were just like, all right, let's get this game over with. We're pushing these dudes around. I hope that they don't walk into this game against Texas with a similar mindset. I'm hoping that they go in there with, we have to dominate if we want to win this game, regardless of who the quarterback is. Michael Hawkins, as well as John Mateer, is going to need the protection to be able to run the plays and even be able to tuck and run and get some scrambles. We've got to get the run game established. So to me, if we can have a B minus performance, I think we'll be fine.
I feel like the under in this one. You guys think low scoring game?
Hammer it.
Yeah, this has the feeling of like a 20-14, even I could see a 17-13 kind of a game, just because, again, 2 really good defenses, 2 really good defensive coordinators, and offenses that are questionable. Now, both teams have really impressive skill players on the outside, but if the offensive lines can't protect, it's not going to matter if you got Ryan Wingo or Isaiah Satania running routes out there, or if you have Arch Manning or John Mateer. It's not going to matter if the offensive lines can't protect.
And I love, people love to run with, what we saw last week is what we're going to see this week. I'll spin this around and say, what if this is the Arch Manning coming out party? What if this is he plays his best game? You know what I mean? Just not saying he will, but just like you always have to think of that in your mind too, because he is a special talent. But
well, and the thing on that, Chris, is like he's got the ability to hit these guys down the field, and he's got the escapability to avoid some pressure from time to time. So it's not like a given that he's just going to be under siege like Jackson Arnold was a few weeks ago. They're going to get to Arch Manning because Oklahoma's pressure packages are just too good, and their guys up front are just too good to not. But if they're not careful, and if they let a Ryan Wingo loose or a Jack Andrews loose, like those guys can create big plays down the field. And if Wingo gets the ball in open space, like he is dangerous.
The difference in Arch and Arnold, I think or Jackson Arnold, I think they preached it to him. Do not, under any circumstance, put that ball in harm's way.
Yep.
Do not throw an interception.
Yep.
Somebody's bragging to me. They're like, Arnold hasn't thrown an interception. I'm like, yeah, because he doesn't throw it.
Right.
Arch will throw it. We saw
Yep.
in the Florida game. He'll get picked, but he's a gunslinger. He
Yeah.
doesn't mind taking the interception because, it could also be a 80-yard touchdown pass. So he'll sling it. He'll let it fly.
Yeah, and that's the one thing I think too. Yeah, I
Go
think
ahead, Jay,
that's going to be the big thing when it comes to Arch is, regardless, he's going to put the ball in the air. It's like it's Sarkisian's thing, right? It makes me think about it even like Lane Kiffin, and I said this as a praise to Lane Kiffin, is that he's found these quarterbacks that have zero issue with just throwing the ball in the air, then let his wide receivers just go play jump ball sometimes. When I saw that from Trinidad Chambliss in his first game, I was like, he's not even hesitating. It's just natural, just boom, boom. Throw it. It's like you don't get that from a lot of quarterbacks where they have the confidence to be able to do that. I mean, Austin Simmons was throwing interceptions to start, but he was still slinging it until he got hurt. So it's hard to find quarterbacks like that regardless, good or bad, they're going to throw the ball and they're not going to just tuck the ball or whatnot. But an Arch gives you that, while at the same time, the way that Florida was pressuring him, it did feel like he was getting a little hesitant as the game was progressing on throwing it. And I think it was because he kept getting hit. I think that's going to be Oklahoma's superpower in this game is if you can get Jaden Jackson, Dominic Williams, David Stone, and Grayson Halton to do enough stunts to where the interior he gets a little nervous about, and then you have R. Mason and Marvin Jones Jr. coming on the backside, or a Taylor Wine, maybe you can get him to clam up more before he throws it and take advantage of it, or you catch him in throwing motions. Because that one thing about Sarkisian's offense is sometimes it takes time for those routes to develop. If you don't give him enough time, you may get lucky enough to even force a fumble while he's in the windup motion.
Yeah, it's going to be a super fun game. Chris, I know you'll have your prediction for OU Texas on your show. Go check out Locked On SEC to get you ready for it. It's going to be a great week of action. I mean, not just OU Texas, but you've got Alabama, Missouri as well. Like, that's going to be a really good game up in Columbia. But I mean, this is the SEC football, right? You get great matchups every single week, and that's so much fun. So go check out Locked On SEC. Subscribe to that show wherever you get your podcasts and over on YouTube. Subscribe to Locked On Sooners as well. Follow Chris at Chris Gordy on Twitter. Follow Jay at Unfair Sports and myself at John 9 Williams. But until next time, he's Chris, he's Jay, I'm John. Boomer.
Sooner. Come on.
We won't make Chris do it. Chris isn't going to do it. No.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. Our thanks to the Locked On Sooners guys for joining us. We'll keep you updated on the latest with John Mateer throughout this week here on Locked On SEC. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks so much for making us your first listen every day. And hey, for your second watch, you can check out the College Football Kickoff Show every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV, getting you set for the big weekend that is set to come in college football. I'm Chris Gordy. It's been Locked On SEC. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.